Now, I'm going to pause here real quick to talk about a different aspect of inclusivity. It's a little hard to see, but this is the section in our character, in our, here I can pump it up, in our personality and background chapter, which talks about your character's sex. And you'll see that the text starts in this column, and then it continues up in the upper right. And the gist of this text is it starts off by telling you can play a male or female character without gaining any special benefits or hindrances. Now, to many people, that seems like a very strange sentence. Like, why the hell would a game even need to tell me this? Well, in D&D, we actually kind of need to tell you this because in first edition Dungeons and Dragons, you got all sorts of penalties if you were female. You could never be as strong as a male character, and all sorts of BS that really had no place, especially in a fantasy setting. Real world physics aside, in a world where dragons are breathing fire and wizards can disintegrate people, who cares? And so if the gender of your character should just be, and sex should be whatever you want it to be. Real quick, when I use the word sex and the words gender, is everyone familiar with the distinction between the two? Raise your hands. You are? Okay, looks like most of you. Just if any of you are not familiar with the distinction between the two, traditionally your sex is it's basically the parts you have, your biological gender, and your gender is what you identify as, how you are perceived often as well. So up in the other column, we have text that talks about that your character doesn't need to be confined to a binary notion of gender. Your character can be trans, your character can be one of these blessed elves who's gender fluid, and we also go on to say that your character's sexual orientation is for you to decide. A simple statement that Dungeons and Dragons has never made before. And you'll see it's very matter of fact. But we, again, wanted to make sure it was there just as a signal, not only to our gay and lesbian players that, hey, we see you. And really, it's a note to myself, the game sees me as a gay man. But it's also a reminder to our straight players. Hey, you might want to play a gay character. Because again, if you're going to consider playing a dwarf, why not a gay human? In many ways, that's far less alien. But it's very strange in sort of gaming culture how often adopting another species is considered easier for people to wrap their head around than being a guy who's playing a woman, or being a straight person playing a gay person, or being a gay person playing a straight person. I've always been fascinated by, again, I have no problem playing a big walking cow, but oh my gosh, playing a woman, that's too much. Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
No, I'm saying maybe some people encounter walking cows more often in their daily.
Yeah, exactly. Now we've gotten one thing that's been, in case you're wondering, one thing that's been really heartening is we've gotten very little pushback about this text. We've been asked before, was there a big conflagration, of D&D fans furious that there's this text in the game? Almost none. People, for the most part, have been delighted by its inclusion. The few people who've been cranky about it, there's just not much we can do for them. Because again,
we can hope they get better.
Yes, we can hope they get better, and not be mad that other people are having fun, because that's often how we interpret it, is people being angry at other people's happiness. And Dungeons and Dragons is a game of, in some ways, wish fulfillment. It's about making as many people happy as possible.
It's like Disney World with more violence and treasure.
That's right. Yes, this is the Disneyland where you kill rings.
Is that Disney World Paris or France?
Yes.
I don't know why. I hope that is not, like, no one's going, ooh, because there was like a massacre there today.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the news. I just, for some reason, that popped in my head. So, career-ending move like that, right?
Mike, did you want to say anything else? I could show some more art.
Yeah, so a lot of it is, like Jeremy said, when we put this stuff in here, or a different approach to art, we actually, I would go as far as to say, I have not personally encountered anyone who was offended by
what we were doing. Now, we had some people give us feedback of how we could do it better, but the amount of, like, I think the staggering majority of people who want to play Dungeons and Dragons just want to play Dungeons and Dragons. And they see cool art, and they see text, and they read it. Oh, I can play a gay character if I want, or a trans character. Oh, that's cool, I'll just, whatever. Most people just want to play the game. And I think that's what we really learned was, this is actually something that's important to help people play the game. Because when we show people that we're representing who they are in the game, that's helping them play the game. And just by embracing showing everyone, or as many people as we can, it's just a net positive. It shows everyone, hey, everyone has a place in our game. Everyone can be the hero or the villain that they want to be in our game. We're not excluding anyone. We're not going out of our way to lock people out. And I think that really is, at the end of the day, that's what lets people just forget about all the stuff that might be happening in the real world and just focus on finding their home in the fantasy world of D&D by, as Jeremy described it earlier, by giving people a landing place, a place that they go, oh, this is there I am in the world, or there's someone who looks like me or makes me think of myself, or someone that I could be. And that's where I think there's an interesting thing of, by thinking about diversity on our end, by us being mindful of it, it actually lets people in our audience not have to really worry about it. They just see it and can enjoy it, regardless of what viewpoint they're bringing to the game or who they are, because they're finding themselves in the game. And they're not being reminded like, well, sure, you're a D&D fan, but there aren't enough of you for us to actually bother putting you in the book, sorry, right? Like that's not the message at all. It's just people being able to play the game and enjoy it because they can see where they fit into D&D. And that was very important for us. And a lot of this is things that I think in gaming, it's just something that people haven't really had to think about. It's very easy to just default to the way things have been. Like Jeremy mentioned, D&D was created in the 1970s, which was a very different political and social atmosphere, between Watergate, the Vietnam War, and everything. The civil rights movement was not even 10 years old at that point in terms of really getting momentum, desegregation in the South and all that stuff. It was a product of its time. So I think that actually behooves us even further to make sure that we are making sure that D&D is progressing along with society, that it is representing the actual audience of people playing the game. It's no longer just the people back in the 70s who are playing the game, who are still playing it today. It's everyone else over the course of 40 years who's been exposed to the game and fallen in love with it. And it's the least we can do to everyone who's chosen to put their time and effort into running a D&D campaign or making a character or really embracing the game and its culture. So for us, in a lot of ways, I felt it was our duty to do this. It was important because this is part of what makes D&D what it is, that it's a fantasy world that anyone can go into. It's an activity that anyone can enjoy, and it's something that really brings people together and gets people to get out of their skin and think of themselves as someone else and look at the world from a different point of view. So that's why really for us, and I don't want to speak with Jeremy, I can give maybe his insights, but that for me why it was very personally important. And so that's why we put a lot of energy into it. So we were putting effort into it so people who weren't us, people who just wanted to play the game, didn't have to do that for us.
Yeah, part of my personal motivation for working with Mike to push the game in this very open direction is I've loved D&D since I was probably 6 years old. And one reason why I loved about it is it's a game where you can create worlds. Most of the time I'm a DM. And it's a game where you can create worlds that aren't bound by the hang-ups of the real world. That's a very powerful imaginative tool. I mean, D&D is a great playground actually if you're wanting to design other games because it gives you a platform for trying out game mechanics, for creating all sorts of different cultures, and again, a chance to imagine what would a better world look like, where there's a place for everybody, where everyone can be a hero, where everyone is seen and acknowledged for the hero that they can be. It's interesting because probably the closest I've gotten to pushback about some of what we've done was actually at one of those gay and lesbian panels that I go to every year. This was at this last Gen Con. And there was an attendee, and I've seen this before, this phenomenon, who was uncomfortable about the fact that actually gay people were being sort of pushed a little bit into kind of a spotlight. Although, again, what we did was so matter of fact, it's hard to think of it as much of a spotlight. It's just say, hey, gay people exist. But that's powerful. And this guy asked a question that I've seen echoed online before, not only about our game, but about other games. Like every BioWare game has people asking this question because of their gay and lesbian content, and the question is, why does this need to be shoved in our faces? Can't we just be quiet about it and just let people be who they want to be? Well, the problem with that is if you're silent about the minority, everyone defaults to their majority assumption. Suddenly, everybody is straight. Suddenly, everybody is white. And the simple acknowledgement of the existence of a segment of the human population is not politically correct and is not political. It's human. Because it's fascinating to me, and this was something I said at the panel to the person who's trying to explore why he was having anxiety about sort of gay content being featured, because we will also have gay characters in our upcoming stories, not just the little mention here in the player's handbook. And part of it, I think, is because some gay people have been rattled by the homophobia they have faced, so sometimes they're uncomfortable about, whoa, suddenly we're actually just a part of mainstream society. So there's some anxiety there. But also, part of it is just sort of this assumed cultural blindness that many of us have. Because he also said, well, why do we need to be talking about sex? And I said, well, we're not talking about sex. Here I don't mean sex as in body parts, but two people getting it on. And I said, simply acknowledging, like in a story, that these two characters in a village are gay, we're not talking about sex. We're talking about human relationships and love. And I asked the guy, anytime a story has a husband and a wife in it, is that a statement about sex? And he's like, well, no. And I said, well, for decades, D&D adventures and stories are filled with husbands and wives who have children, which, by the way, is a product of sex. And for anyone who didn't know that.
But then how did my wife get pregnant? Oh, sorry.
And so there's just, again, there's this fascinating double standard that people have because of sort of certain assumed blind spots. That, again, we're not talking about detailed depictions of anybody getting it on. We're just talking about acknowledging the existence of how wonderfully diverse humanity is.
Yeah, exactly. And that, again, to touch on what Jeremy was saying, it's just about, for someone who we don't depict, when people say, oh, I just want to play a game, I don't have to worry about this stuff. Well, if we don't depict somebody, we're actually asking that person, well, now you have to think about it. You can't just enjoy this game and play it. You have to start thinking about all this stuff and all the implications of what it means that we're not depicting you. And so that really was the spirit of just letting people enjoy the game as a game and giving everyone a place they could call home, an identity that they could look at, a piece of art they could go, hey, that could be me. That could be just me walking in the fantasy world, giving them a place, a destination in our game.